Well, we meet in our gospel today the patron saint of shady business practices. There are inappropriate and immoral things happening at every level in this story today. There is the wicked servant's squandering of the goods of his master. There is the apparent laziness of this steward who blatantly acknowledges that he has no interest in actually having to work for his money. There are all those kind of backdoor transactions that are meant to curry favor with the debtors and further decimate the wealth of the rich master. I mean, with all this deplorable behavior, we might expect that this parable would end with Jesus really kind of dropping the hammer and saying something like, "And he will be thrown out into the darkness where there will be wailing and gnashing of teeth." But that's not how it ends at all. He is not punished. In fact, he is praised for his clever ways. He is held up as an example of prudence. Now, I don't know about for you, but for me, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're told that the person who is dishonest in small matters will be dishonest in great ones as well. And yet here we are. A dishonest steward being praised for his dishonest activity. Either Jesus is confusing his stories here, or he's trying to teach us a lesson, that there is a deeper message for us. If this crooked steward can be praised for his prudence, then certainly it is possible for us as well. We are a blessed people, richly provided for by our Father. And we can ask, what have we done with what we have been given? Because this is precisely where the steward begins to go astray. He begins to use his master's money for his own designs. He's no longer pursuing the work or the mission of his master. And because of this, he has lost sight of the purpose of the treasures, the resources that have been entrusted to his care. And I think this is one of the first lessons for us. Our lives will begin to go astray if we do not remain faithful to the one who has blessed us so abundantly. You know, we can all do our own things in this parish. We can all do our own things in the church, in our families, in our communities. We can all get involved in our own little projects. And we can take our gifts and we can run to our own little corner of the world and decorate it really nicely. But in the end, we will find ourselves bound up in this prison, a nicely decorated prison, but a prison cell that weighs us down, that keeps us from experiencing the full beauty of what God desires for us. This happens so much. We get so caught up in all these things that we're involved in. We're like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off, just kind of running around doing our own little things, not really thinking about what we're doing, not recognizing what it is that all these things are contributing to. We are so much better together than we are alone. And we are so much better following a common mission than we are doing our own thing. This, I think, is the realization that earns this crook of a steward the praise of being prudent. He knows that he can't do it alone. He can't survive on his own. I mean, he says it in the gospel, "I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg." And all this backdoor bargaining that's going on is nothing more than an attempt to prevent himself from being stuck by himself, from being isolated, not having any resources to care for himself. But Jesus isn't telling us this story so that we can all become a bunch of cheats and robbers and end up in prison someday. He's not asking us to give in to a life of corruption so that we can finally come to this realization on our own. We don't need to. Because with a little bit of reflection, we can see that it's possible for us now We can recognize now that it's better for us to be together. It's better for us to follow a common mission and to use our resources together. And Jesus wants to make it clear in this little story that if this dishonest steward, if this crooked man who has cheated his master out of his money, if this guy can recognize it, then certainly we, people of faith, can see it ourselves, can recognize it in our own lives. But certainly we can't take this kind of awareness for granted. It really takes time on our part. It takes some reflection on our part. You know, I see this a lot with high school students who are involved in 3,000 different activities after school. I mean, I don't see how they get any schoolwork done. Maybe they don't, and they're just cheating. I don't know. But it's not just high school students, it's adults too. I mean, I see a lot of adults running around all over the place, doing one thing after another, running kids to practice, to school, to all these extracurricular activities. I see it in myself as I'm running from one thing to another. You know, it's easy for us to get caught in this. It's easy for us to run from one thing to another, to be doing our own thing, to get so caught up in running from one thing to another that we don't even remember the meaning. We don't even remember why we started the day. We don't remember the value of our family. We forget why we decided to have children. We forget why we decided to enter the priesthood. We forget because we're so involved. We're so caught up in all this activity that we forget. We forget that the source of all of these blessings, the source of our vocations, the source of all that's been given to us, has given it all to us so that we can be drawn closer to Him. I would invite you this week to just take 5 minutes of silence a day. I'm not adding a whole lot to your plate here. Just 5 minutes a day in silence, asking, what gifts have you been given? And how can you use your gifts for the sake of something greater? Whether it be this parish, this community, or your own family. Do not forget why you have been given what you have been given. It's a challenge for all of us, and it's for our sake, so that as individuals we don't end up alone, isolated, afraid that our lives are meaningless. And it's for the sake of this parish, for the sake of our community and our families, so that we can contribute to the good things that are happening around us. May God help us to be prudent stewards, using what we have been given for the sake of our brothers and sisters, and always acknowledging that God is the source of all of these blessings.